I want to give a shout out to start off this show. We've been a part of the Red River Valley Fair, the Kfgo studio, right there next to the grandstands when the fair's going on. By this time, you typically hear the drum beats behind me as the bands are getting ready. And another announcement earlier today that Tesla and Vixen are going to be at the Red River Valley Fairgrounds July 12th. That's going to be on Tuesday. When you think back and you look at the lineup that's been approved and agreed to this year out at the Red River Valley Fairgrounds. I mean, the three doors down. Remember how we had the whole conversation of what band you've been to the most? And it was a tie between Foo Fighters, Garth Brooks, and randomly three doors down for me. Well, they're going to be here. They've been a fun show, and I'll grant there's been a long time since I've seen them. But then you get that followed up by Tim McGraw. You got Walker Hayes. And, I mean, arguably, we'll have to see because the way of which the structures are, Tim McGraw is going to be pushing records, right? And I don't mean vinyl records. I don't mean that he's going to be slinging CDs out there more than anyone else. I mean attendance-wise out at the fairgrounds. That's going to be July 9th, that Saturday night. You got Walker Hayes, going to be another one of those big nights. Tesla with special against Vixen. I know that there is a crowd out there listening right now that says, you know what, Tesla, sign me up. So, yeah, Cody Cashman, the whole crew out there, they're putting in work. And I know that visiting with him over the last couple of years, that he's now been the head honcho out there. He said, look, we got some big plans out here. We're going to be changing things up. But I know that some of the changes that led to this, that initial shock of the change of how you don't just walk necessarily through the gates all the time and you just walk right into the grandstands. Well, those changes are what allows you to get a Tim McGraw, by throwing a couple more bucks at the fairground so they can actually pony up to get some of these big acts. So seeing that Tesla coming in along with like Tim McGraw, it's going to be a busy time. It's going to be a fun time out at the Red River Valley Fairgrounds, and we're going to be out there broadcasting for that. So I just wanted to highlight that now that this latest announcement came out with Tesla. The other thing, the fact that it's 2 weeks now, right? So there'll be more announcements along the way. Here's what's coming up. There are going to be announcements from Emma Olson, Minnesota Department of Transportation. We started in Fargo. Our buddy, Mr. Gorder from the city of Fargo, filling in and let you know about some of the construction you can expect inside of Fargo city limits this summer. The thing you got to keep in mind, billions of dollars, trillions of dollars in infrastructure was approved from Congress, went through the states, and now it's being sprinkled out. So those roads, those bridges, all the updates you need to get where you're going to have the water supply. Well, it's time to put that to work this spring, this summer, and into this fall. So we're going to continue this whole little series of just picking one spot and giving you the latest information. We got about half the list done with Emma Olson of what you can expect if you're driving out to Lakes Country all the way out down to Alexandria, because there's a lot to be done out there. One thing that I'll be curious, and I know there's a job fair that we were a part of just last week. All these construction jobs, I need to start filling them up. So one thing that I'm going to keep in mind and we'll be watching as we get into construction season is, are they able to find the bodies that are going to be out there to get the job done in a timely manner? Because that is something that we're facing up and down the board here. So we're going to have that conversation in just a little bit. I want to head out to Bismarck as well and tell you about something that happened during a Legacy Fund earnings committee earlier this morning. I know that committee is still visiting right now, so I couldn't pull the actual audio for you in an exchange with committee members. And Lynn Helms, he's the director of the Department of Mineral Resources. Now, he's one that's out there quite often talking about how great the industry is doing, what needs to be done, how you're going to get some goals met when it comes to development, the expansion of the oil and gas industry in the state of North Dakota. But earlier today, he was rather blunt in his response to some positioning from lawmakers, is how I'm going to put that right now, when they're trying to figure out, well, why, if you've got the price per barrel being where it has been over the course of the last month, haven't we seen more activity right here in North Dakota? And, of course, you could probably fill in the blank in your mind before we get into it as to what they were really trying to gear up towards, who they were trying to point the finger at. And Lynn Helms, to his credit, was open and honest about this. We're going to have that conversation in just a little bit of time. But I really want to start here And we'll get into this in more detail with somebody that was in the room a little bit later on, but they're driving right now back from the meeting that happened last night down in South Dakota, in which you had a committee now that has been working for quite some time in the legislature to figure out whether or not moving forward and recommending the impeachment of the Attorney General and Jason Roundsburg, who, if you recall, was distracted driving, veered off the lane, according to police reports, struck and killed somebody with his car, drove off, came back later on to discover that there was Mr. Bover was deceased in the ditch after he thought he hit a deer. You keep thinking about that family that has to continue to go through this every time there is a development or lack thereof in this situation. Now, why this committee was getting together to talk about impeachment is because they wanted to wait until the justice system did their role. And you know what? I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. They failed on the justice side of this. The no contest, the misdemeanors, all of that. They slapped him on the wrist when it comes to fines, meaning Jason Roundsburg. So I was hopeful. I really was that, in fact, the legislative process, that there would be some political courage to at least do, I think, what is the right thing and to remove him from being the chief law enforcement officer in the entire state of South Dakota. They failed at that also last night, for now. Not over yet, but the committee recommended that they do no contest of impeaching and removing Jason Roundsburg from office, the same individual that got distracted driving and killed somebody with his car. So now here we are. Politics is getting injected into this, and to her credit, and you know how I've been hard on the policy decisions of Governor Kristi Noem in South Dakota, who I think has more of an eye outside of the state of South Dakota, maybe more so on Washington, and what her aspirations are. But she's been right on this all along, that he should have resigned, that he should have got a stronger penalty from the justice system, and then, since he didn't resign, that the legislature should have impeached him. She's been right. None of that has happened as of yet. I want your reaction as to what you heard and what you saw, and the fact that now you've got the legislature in South Dakota that's overwhelmingly from the Republican side, the same as Jason Roundsburg, said, yeah, we just don't feel like he did anything that violated his oath to his office as the chief law enforcement officer in South Dakota. You can let me know your thoughts on the Laney studio line at 237-5948. You can also text into the Consultants of North Dakota text club. That's at 35270. We'll come back and get your take on this in just a little bit. I'm Tyler Axe. This afternoon is live. We're just getting started on a Tuesday afternoon. Don't go anywhere. A message comes in that I think nails some of this in the way that I've been seeing it as well. So I want to thank some of these messages coming into the Eye Consultants of North Dakota Text Club. Tyler, the Roundsburg decision clearly demonstrates there are at least two different systems of justice. It also clearly shows justice is not immune to politics. And what about the sheriff who loaned Roundsburg his car? Has he been investigated? If not, why not? The latter part about the sheriff, he's involved. He loaned the vehicle after Roundsburg showed up with his damaged vehicle after he struck someone and drove away. Has he been investigated? Not that I'm aware of. Now, that doesn't mean during the time, and recall, North Dakota's law enforcement did some of this investigation on the early stages of this. So now, whether or not they question the sheriff and what he knew, I would hope that they did. But I don't recall off the top of my head. So if not, why not? I'm not sure if he was or not, so I can't address that. But, I mean, folks, you've been following along, especially if you're a regular listener to the show, because we've discussed it. I mean, the fact that the victim had a flashlight on and it was still on. So you're going to tell me you got outside of your vehicle after what you thought struck a deer. Now, I've been in vehicles that have struck deer. I never saw a flashlight being carried by a deer. Yeah, I've been in a vehicle that struck a deer, and never once were a pair of reading glasses then on the inside of the vehicle from the accident. You know, and recall that during this process, you know, when the video was coming out, and now there was people saying this video is going to taint some of it. Well, because we got to see his demeanor when he was questioned by investigators when they said, did you know that his glasses were in your vehicle? I mean, the sheer response, some of the inconsistencies in the story. I mean, folks, doesn't take a rocket scientist here. And unfortunately, to this date, as of now, justice still hasn't been served. Not for this family, not for Jenny, who was sitting in that committee room, who understandably broke down, whose mother had to console her as the lawmakers chose to not do anything with this. You know, Roundsburg pleaded a no contest, got it down to 2 misdemeanors of distracted driving late August. I mean, think about all the times that, you have seen somebody driving with their cell phone in their hands, and you know what, you get this ticket. Thankfully, most of those times doesn't result in somebody dying. When they do, there is so much more than just, you got a couple of misdemeanors here. More should have been done in the courtroom, and since the courtroom didn't, and quite frankly, it should have been done on the politics side of this. And it shouldn't matter if it's a Republican South Dakota Attorney General and a Republican-led legislature. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. In fact, the highest profile Republican in South Dakota is the one that's been the most forceful about this up until now. And the governor is saying he's got to go. Now, I don't have the authority, but lawmakers, you do. Do it. And they haven't. And for the life of me, I don't know why they're protecting this guy's political career. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of more capable attorneys in South Dakota that are going to be able to fulfill the duties of the office as being the head person, man or woman, for the agency that's in charge of law enforcement, without violating the law, pleading down to a misdemeanor, and ending up having to kill somebody. It just seems that there are so many stones that have been turned over. You just don't like what you've seen under it, so we're going to look the other way and just hope that this all goes away, is the way that the legislature seems to be approaching this. It's not right. Tyler, Republicans condone horrible behavior from Trump. Why would South Dakota be any different? Another one asking, Tyler, didn't the sheriff pass on? I believe you are right. You know, right, reading that live on air, I do seem to recall that being the case. So there would be no way available to go and ask questions of that individual if that, in fact, is the case. And I want to thank you for reminding me of that. I do recall that being the case here. But the fact that you've got just another letdown in this situation this is now at least the third opportunity where something could have been done. You impeach, you remove, he never gets to run for office again. If you're a Republican in South Dakota, listen to me right now, in which I know there are, do you even want him as your attorney general? And if not, now's the time to start calling your lawmaker and say, look, what are you doing when you're getting back out there? Because there's going to be one more opportunity for the legislature to get together, get in that room, and push a button on whether or not they want to keep this guy as the attorney general or remove him. And I bet you if you go to any small town, hell, I don't even care. You can go to Sioux Falls. You sit at a diner, you sit at any cafe, wherever it is, and you put a pen to paper. You say, you know what? Fill this out for me. You don't even have to put your name to it. You don't have to put anything identifying. Just tell me whether or not you would vote to remove Jason Roundsburg as attorney general. Overwhelmingly, I have no doubt the answer would come back. Absolutely, I would. So why is it that these lawmakers, as of right now, are too chicken to do the job when anyone that has been following this knows what is an easy decision in this whole case? A little bit of justice, just a little bit, besides a $1,500 fine because of what he did by being a distracted driver. We're going to be talking with somebody that was in the room a little bit later on. The senior political correspondent that is with the Argus Leader, he said that they were shocked. Everyone in that room was disappointed and shocked. We'll see what, in fact, he heard a little bit later on. Here's what's coming up after we get you caught up with KFGO News. We're going to check in with Minnesota DOT. What are some of the construction projects you could expect if you're heading out to the lake? You live in that area. Some of the closures, some of the delays, some of the routes. We'll be visiting with Em Olson to get you all the latest on that. And we'll check in with Rusty Halverson with all your latest agriculture news. It's Tuesday afternoon. KFGO time is 2:28. I'm Tyler Axedis. You're listening to 790 AM, 94.1 FM, and, of course, 104.7 FM, KFGO. Rusty Halverson joins me in the KFGO studio.
Yes, sir.
Hi, man. Heard you actually on the KFGO news update not long ago. You've been a busy guy today.
Well, we try and keep busy.
Yeah.
Yep.
We always look busy, and that's important to at least have the appearance of looking busy.
Thank you.
I've learned that from other jobs, not this one. I take this one so incredibly serious that I am actually always very busy as well.
I've seen you, and you're drilled down.
Yes, focused.
Yep. Yes,
laser.
Yes.
Anytime I'm in that office, there's no shenanigans. It's right to work.
No, not a bit. Not a bit.
But I was curious because you're talking about something that's actually quite important when you're thinking about the industry in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I want to expand upon that a little bit because, I mean, when you hear about this, it wasn't long ago. It was just a few years ago that, unfortunately, a lot of, poultry that had to be put down because of flu. Mm-hmm. Are people starting to panic here because of what they're not?
No,
okay,
panic. No. You've probably seen the headlines. Or heard about it, but Minnesota is ranked number 1 in turkey production in the nation, and there have been new detections in a few different flocks about high-path avian influenza, H5N1, and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and other state officials trying to get ahead of this, announcing the activation of a USDA response team in Minnesota to support that state's containment efforts of avian influenza. Not the first time that it's been around. Back in 2014, 2015, there was an outbreak that many folks would be familiar with when it comes to depopulation. Now that USDA team expected to arrive tomorrow could be deployed for about 3 weeks. But we talked earlier today with Butch Bray. He's a turkey grower and vice president of Minnesota Turkey Research and Promotion Council. He's based near Sleepy Eye in Brown County, Minnesota, and he believes that the state's poultry growers are better prepared to handle this situation thanks to the lessons that we learned from that avian flu outbreak in 2014-2015. So everybody's taking the biosecurity measures that need to be taken to prevent any further spread of this disease. It's not uncommon to detect avian influenza in wild birds, Tyler, and Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, right in that Mississippi flyway when it comes to migrating birds. And so this is a situation that is going to be monitored. Everybody's taking the necessary steps to prevent any kind of infections into flocks. And if it does happen, there are some steps that growers can take to be compensated for their losses because of those lessons that we learned back in 2014, 2015. And we're going to stay on top of the situation.
Well, maybe we'll talk about that next hour. How's that sound?
Okay.
Very good. Appreciate it, Rusty.
Yep, you bet.
Rusty Halverson, Sarah Heinrich. You can go to KFGO.com. Learn why they're multi-award-winning journalists. Just click on that agriculture tab and learn more there. CBS National News on the way. We're going to switch gears just for a moment here because we've got a narrow window. There's a meeting coming up at 3 o'clock. Minnesota DOT, we've been telling you where in the metro area, outside, wherever you're listening to the 790 AM signal, we're going to try to let you know about the construction season ahead. We're going to do that on Minnesota side of the river. I will get back to your thoughts on what's going on or what the lack thereof of any consequences for Jason Roundsburg, the South Dakota Attorney General. We've got that. I've got some Lynn Helms' conversation going on out in Bismarck. And speaking of Bismarck, there's going to be a convention out there this weekend, the North Dakota Republican Convention. I have been contacted by a couple of sources about maybe some of the worry going on in the John Hoeven camp when they're competing against Rick Becker for the U.S. Senate endorsement. I'll tell you about that and so much more coming up on Afternoons Live next. 52. I'm going to get back to some of the messages you sent in about the South Dakota Attorney General and the situation there. And like I said, later on the show, we'll be visiting with one of the reporters that was in the room from the Argus Leader. But it's just disappointing, is putting it mildly, that everyone has failed to hold the Attorney General accountable for his actions. And that's quite frankly what you're echoing in the text club. Tyler, apparently he actually is above the law. He needs to be ousted and put in prison for vehicular manslaughter. Another one, Tyler, I had a buddy roll his pickup on interstate with slick roads. No damage to anything except to his pride and pickup. And the state patrol felt the need to write him a ticket after totaling his pickup. That's more than somebody that killed the guy. I know that's what's so appalling to this. It's a slap on the wrist that Jason Roundsburg received from the court. And because the court failed to do their job, in my opinion, that's where just a tiny bit of political courage from the South Dakota legislature could have done something. There could have been some form of justice served, and they didn't as of yet. There's still time. If you're a South Dakota resident and you're wondering why in the world that Jason Roundsburg is still your attorney general after what he did, you better be calling your legislator and saying, look, you've got an opportunity to get this guy out of office, then you better do it. Tyler, Trump said he could walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot someone dead with no consequences. Apparently the same goes for Republican politicians in South Dakota as well. It's just completely shameful. One more. Tyler, if the GOP legislator doesn't want Noam to appoint a lapdog attorney general to protect her for inquiries of her state airplane use and executive spending decisions on federal COVID funds, among other things, if they pardon Roundsburg, they control him. That's an interesting take coming in. You know, because that same legislature, if I recall, now there's been questions as to the ethics of Governor Noam and her use of her office when it comes to getting her daughter a job and a license. And there seem to have been some appearances of unethical behavior. And I believe it was some of the same legislature that basically just, we'll just move on from this. And this is something, and this is not isolated to South Dakota, but certainly it's been the most recent, to where you have this body made up of people that are elected just so close to your home. There's a reason why they're the people's house, right? And they don't do their job, to just put it as blunt as possible. They're legislators in name only. They got the title, they got the benefits, but the job that it entails, too often, they just don't quite meet the standards of what they told you they were going to do. I mean, they'll do all the flashy things, all the things that you're seeing on, the nightly news when it comes to cable television. Okay, well, we better hit John. Pass up. Send that bill draft in an email, and you know what? I'll get it drafted up here, and we'll go ahead and we'll introduce on this thing, even though it's got no literal impact on your day-to-day life, aside from, boy, it makes that lawmaker feel quite proud of themselves, saying, hey, I was the one that led the charge on that. When you've got situations that are real. We had a whole hour talking yesterday with two residents in Grand Forks that are taking it upon themselves to get answers to things that are being done to their neighborhood, more so than any lawmaker in the Grand Forks area seems to have been doing. And you got one of the most powerful lawmakers in Grand Forks up there now, and no Ray Holmberg's retiring. And I wish him the best in that. But there are experienced lawmakers in that town, in that community, that's going to be impacted by something that's quite controversial, as you heard yesterday. And instead of leading the charge, they're saying, well, all you citizens out there that are taking it upon yourselves because you're so worked up, just to let us know what you find out. Boy, that's leadership, isn't it? To have the non-elected citizens doing your work, even though we're paying your salary through our taxes. Good job. And yet we keep electing these individuals. Now in South Dakota, this is a job, this is a task, this is a responsibility of that legislature to hold to account to the other branch and the executive. That old check and balance, it's time to exercise that. You swore an oath to do just this. and yet you're failing to do so. We'll continue that conversation a little bit later on. When I come back, I'm going to switch gears on you. We'll come back when we've got our reporter down in South Dakota. Lynn Helms was out before a legislative committee today saying, yeah, here's the reason why you're not seeing increased oil and gas production in North Dakota. We'll have some of that for you. Also, there's a convention coming up in Bismarck, the North Dakota Republican Convention. We covered part of the Democratic Convention last week. We're doing that this week with the Republicans, thanks to Welton's Tire Service down in Lisbon. This U.S. Senate race between Rick Becker, John Hoeven, and some of the phone calls I'm getting from people that have been on the receiving end of other calls. I mean, there are sources all over this small state saying, something must be going on in the John Hoeven campaign, because what they're allegedly asking of people to come to the convention and who they're asking is quite shocking. We'll tell you about that in just a little bit. I'm Tyler Axis. You got it locked into KFGO Fargo.
cloudy yet, and 42. I'm Paul Juergens. A man wanted for the murder of his wife in the Twin Cities suburb of Champlin has been arrested in Fargo. The 45-year-old suspect was arrested this morning at the Dakota Park apartment complex. He was sought for the stabbing death of a 35-year-old woman whose body was found in the front yard of a home in Champlin last night. KFGO's Don Haney was at the scene of the arrest this morning.
Police got some information on him. He was at an apartment building, 3100 block of 34th Avenue South. That's a couple of blocks just Essentia here, south of 32nd Avenue.
James Nyante was taken to the Cass County Jail pending his return to Minnesota. His car was found in Brooklyn Park. Champlin police have identified the victim as Pichu Yates. A Detroit Lakes man who ran a martial arts school has been charged with felony first-degree criminal sexual conduct involving a minor. Back in February, a Becker County elementary school informed the sheriff's office of an alleged sexual assault that involved a girl related to Patrick Fineday. During an interview with the girl, the complaint says she told them she did not tell anyone else because she didn't think anyone would believe her. Then on March 11th, Detroit Lakes police interviewed Fineday. They say he admitted to sexually assaulting the girl in the last 2 years. Additionally, he's admitted to sexually assaulting another girl related to him. If convicted, he faces up to 30 years in prison. Minnesota state government will divest its assets in Russia to show its solidarity with the people of Ukraine, a bipartisan expression of moral outrage that supporters say is worth the cost. The Senate voted 67-0 this afternoon to mandate that the state sell off its investments in Russia and neighboring Belarus, which has supported Russia's month-old war in Ukraine. Those assets are mostly held by the state's public employee pension funds. The vote followed unanimous approval in the House last Thursday. It sends the bill to Governor Tim Walz for his signature. Bismarck area Democrats have appointed a North Dakota Senate candidate to the seat for which he is campaigning. Tracy Potter says the District 35 committee has appointed him to fill the remainder of Senator Aaron Oban's term, which expires in November. Oban recently resigned after President Biden appointed her to become a state director for the Department of Agriculture Rural Development Agency. She decided not to seek re-election to the legislature this year due to what she said at the time was the divisive nature of politics. Potter announced a campaign last month for the seat he held from 2006 to 2010. Fargo-Moorhead, a cloudy, windy afternoon. We have some rain on radar now in and around Fargo-Moorhead. Some heavier showers to the west-northwest. Near 46 for our high. Rain tonight then. Mixed precipitation, maybe some light snow as well. 28. Accumulation from a trace to as much as 3 inches. That would be tonight through tomorrow morning. Cloudy tomorrow, windy. Snow should end in the morning. Our high 34. Fargo-Moorhead, mostly cloudy, 42. Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
You know, this is a bit of a sidebar, but I got to get out there. One thing that drives me crazy right now is such a small thing, and I get it, it's 2022. Everything's digital. You can do everything with your phone. You get into concerts, for example, by using your phone, your QR codes, you know, the barcodes. It's all right there, and it's supposed to be so convenient. But there was something about having that physical ticket stub. Because those are collectors, right? I mean, how many of you have gone to a concert? You've gone to a sporting event? I mean, pick anything that you had to purchase your way to get in, and you have that ticket stub, and you get to keep it, and you still have it. Some people have put those inside of their bars. You know, when you put whether it's polyurethane or whatever it is, to where you just really slick it up, but you get to hold on to that forever, that piece of history or that piece of what's coming up. You know, some people put them in frames. I know, like, the first time Elton John came to the Fargo Dome, for example, with Billy Joel, got the ticket, the actual ticket stub, because, boy, that was a different time to get into those concerts. You had to have the physical stub with you. You know, and then you put that in a frame, maybe with the cover of the album or whatever photo, or you have a poster. You get what I'm leading to here. But now with everything digital, you don't get that anymore. You know, it's it seems as though, some things you improve upon them, you advance. Hey, this is a new way of doing things. But can't we still get that little bit for those collectors? I think about, as I was just telling you, that's what got me all riled up about this again, is, the fact that there are concerts, there are people whom you've gone and seen over the last, I would say 5 years is really when we made the transition. And over the course of that time, you didn't get those. So, you might have a photo, but there's still something cool about having that ticket stub just with everything printed on it, the date, the venue, the opening act, all of that. And it's not the same if you print off on an 8x11 sheet that's got, all right, well, here's the code over here, and here's the Ticketmaster advertisement for whatever other concerts they're trying to advertise. And being with the Foo Fighters that were coming up, I know there's a lot of people in this area that either bought tickets to go to Minneapolis, or maybe you're going to Sioux Falls for my friends up north, or maybe going to Winnipeg. Well, you're not going to get that opportunity. And I kind of wish I would have had the ticket stub for that, knowing that, as I was telling you yesterday, it's probably not ever going to have an opportunity again. But yeah, I get it, the convenience, because you know what? Now you don't have to make sure. Okay, well, there's 6 of us, and you're going to be in the seat 1, you're in seat 2, and we better make sure we have the entire packet of stubs with us. We can just do it all on our smartphone here. But sometimes, if it isn't broke, do we have to really fix it? Am I the only one that still wants the actual physical ticket stubs to these things for exactly this reason? Because it's a moment that you get to hold on, you physically touch it, you put it somewhere, you get to look at it all the time, and then it's a story for when you have people over. I don't get that really anymore because everything's all digital. There, I got that off my chest. Tyler, you can still get physical tickets. I want to know your secret as to how. Okay, so let's say you go through a third-party vendor, right? So you go to StubHub just to pick one out. Paying a little bit more, probably. Can you request, whether it's from that third party? Now, granted, that's probably somebody else bought the tickets. So let's just say, no, you go straight to Ticketmaster or whatever service it is. You go to the band's website and they get you. How do you go about requesting it to get that physical copy? Because, I know that you can say that if you get it to your email, because you got the digital ticket, and you can print it off and you have that sheet of paper. If you can still get that little ticket stub that's orange and white, for example, and you get that, I want to know how. 35270 is the I Consult of North Dakota Text Club. You can call me on the Laney Studio line at 237-5948. All right, I've been receiving calls. This is one of those periods of time in which people are positioning themselves to, make headway in whatever office they might be running for. And on the Republican side, for the first time in quite a while, you have got something that is going to be a contested incumbent race. You've got John Hoeven, who is obviously your current U.S. Senator. And you've got Rick Becker, who's now, leaving the House of Representatives on the state level. He's taking on John Hoeven. They're going around to these districts, and things are getting a little heated by people who have been in those rooms that have reached out to me. But for some of the people that haven't been in those rooms, they're still getting calls. Because I've had calls now from Democrats, not Republicans here, Democrats in North Dakota saying, hey, received a call here from John Hoeven's campaign that they are willing, according to these individuals, to pay me to come be a delegate at that convention if I'm going to pledge my support to John Hoeven. Now, if that's true, that whole, we'll pay you. We'll pay you to come, voice your support for us. I don't care that you're a Democrat. We just need you. It sounds desperate, right? If, in fact, and I have no reason to doubt that the people that have reached out are being truthful, why would they just make that up? I think there's actually a pattern here of that candidate doing that. I think if you go back to his first run as governor, that was contested. But I bring this up, one, because it's a stinky way to do politics. We have to be paying people to support you. But that tells me that there is a little level of concern from either John Hoeven, his campaign. Now, if it's just because of what they're watching in some of the district level conventions, to where you have got, for example, down in south central North Dakota here, where you have Bob Erbley, who Bob is very conservative. Like Bob, he's one of those guys we weren't going to probably vote identical, but it was just a good, he was a respectfully decent guy. Well, he just got railroaded out from his seat by what people, the Bastiat caucus. So the Rick Beckers on the lower scale, the ones that are following Rick Becker out of these conventions and voting out incumbents. So I don't know if it's the fear of that, if they've got some internal polling done within the Republican Party that shows, hey, Rick Becker's making gains here. You don't start making these calls unless you're worried about something. So it's going to be one of those races to where earlier on I thought, okay, well, John Hoeven is the individual gets elected by the widest margins. He's been a household name for a lot of people. That this is going to be a cakewalk for him out in Bismarck next week. If what I'm hearing from these sources is true, that he's calling and asking others, and I guess he'll cut a check because he's able to do so. Trust me. That you know what, you come, we'll cover your meals, whatever it might be, but we need you. And that level of desperation speaks quite loudly about the fear they have of Rick Becker's candidacy. And on Friday, we're going to be watching and telling you more about that. The Welton's Tire Service down in Lisbon sponsoring us to go and talk about what's going on out in Bismarck. So that's coming up a little bit later on. Your thoughts, 35270. I'll come back to that. Also, what's going on in Bismarck. Today, there was a Legacy Fund meeting from the legislative side, and they're talking about the lack of increased development when it comes to oil and gas production. Lynn Helms is the point of contact for a lot of that, especially on the state governmental side. He's the director of the Department of Mineral Resources. He gets asked questions from lawmakers. Well, he provided a pretty direct and I think honest answer to Representative Craig Hedlund's question as to, well, why? Who's to blame here? I'll share that with you in just a little bit. I'm Tyler Axis. You got it locked into Afternoons Live on 790 AM, 94.1 and 104.7 FM, KFGO. Bottom of the hour, we'll get you caught up with Paul Driggins in the KFGO News Center. And we'll also visit with Rusty Halverson as well. Get to see my messages here at 35270 about a variety of things. One, Tyler, my husband is a delegate and not getting paid for being Hoven's delegate. I'm just reiterating and telling you what calls I've been receiving. I'm not sure how broad this is. I don't know how many people are even going to be a part of the convention, but you don't have random people calling with the same story unless there's something behind it here about what's going on. My whole point is, there are times in which if you've been involved in North Dakota politics at all, I mean, you can understand when somebody starts getting a little shaky about what's kind of coming on. Now, again, if it's going to catch me on the blind side. In fact, those calls caught me blindsided here because from afar, now you know that I'm probably not getting all the Christmas cards from our friends here on the Republican side of North Dakota. It's been a little rough sometimes in our relationship, but we move on and as best we can here. From afar, it just seems that this wasn't going to be much of a race. Now, if you think about Rick Becker's history on the statewide ballot, when he ran for governor, I think he kind of surprised some people, myself included, as to how good of a showing he had at the convention. And the positioning of, the convention now, I think there's been enough examples here in North Dakota that has you questioning the importance of conventions, to be quite honest, at least on the Republican side. I mean, you have a U.S. Senator right now, not John Hoven, but Kevin Cramer, that went around the convention and competed at the primary spot against Brian Kolk, who did get the endorsement to run for Congress back in, was that 2012, if memory serves? And John Hoven goes on Kevin Cramer goes on and wins the primary and becomes your U.S. congressman in North Dakota. Our current governor, same thing. Doesn't get the endorsement. Wayne Stenhjem gets the endorsement. Doug Bergen goes out, spends a lot of money, shakes a lot of hands, and beats the people that a lot of us observers thought was going to be the next governor in Wayne Stenhjem. So if all that comes down to, let's say Rick Becker does pull an upset here, which again, I think it's such a long shot, but take it from just getting receiving the calls that I did of, if they're desperate enough to be calling people saying, we really, really need you here. In fact, we've got cash if you need, maybe there is an upset brewing, but I don't know. And I haven't seen anywhere that John Hoven is saying that if that is the case, that I'm not going to the primary. So even with all that, I would not be surprised if this goes that same route. And then who knows? I mean, with the war chest, politically speaking, that John Hoven's campaign has been able to accrue and all that over the years, I imagine that he has got the upper hand there, as I suspect he does right now in the convention, but time will tell. I just had to share with you what I'm hearing from people in the states here of North Dakota. 237-5948, that's Laney's studio line. You can also contact, as all of you choose to do, at the I Consultants of North Dakota Text Club at 35270. I got an interesting message, and I'd said, one last thing on this whole, is he paying, that somebody's texting me, this person knows. John Hoven paid for people to come in to the Republican convention when he beat out Gary Nelson. So there's a pattern here, folks, if that's the case. So apparently he just wants to buy the endorsement of the Republican Party is what his pattern has been over the last, 2 decades, whatever it's been here. Other messages in, and I want to get to this because I'm going to try to get the audio now that I think the meeting's wrapped up out in Bismarck here. There was a meeting that was going on earlier today. You got the lawmakers that asked questions about the Legacy Fund. And, the Legacy Fund, you know where that's funded from, right? Oil and gas development. And when we've talked over the last month or more, we'll take that all the way back to January of last year. People talking about oil and gas development, Why aren't they drilling more? It's because of Joe Biden and his policies. Well, that question was asked, or at least insinuated, by Craig Hedlund, who's a Republican out of, I believe, the Montpelier area, of Lynn Helms, the director of the Department of Mineral Resources, because it doesn't take long to go look up to see what the price per barrel is right now and what it has been for about the last month. Yet the question is, why aren't we developing more? That question was posed to Lynn Helms. And the blunt way of which he finally... Now, one thing I do take issue is there's been a lot of accusations and a lot of finger-pointing for this last month at least, and nobody has said a peep on the official side because it doesn't necessarily fit in the whole discourse of what politicians want. Lynn Helms said it today, and I'm going to play that for you if we can get that audio. If not, I'll just read the meeting minutes so you can hear from the official in North Dakota why we're not seeing an expansion of oil and gas development right here in North Dakota. In the meantime, we'll get you caught up with Paul Jiggins in that Kfgo News Center. Rusty Halverson, my conversation, your thoughts as well. You, me, this microphone, your cell phone, the whole rest of the way here on Afternoons Live. Don't go anywhere.
KFGO News, mostly cloudy, 43. I'm Paul Juergens. A 45-year-old man wanted in a suburban Minneapolis homicide has been taken into custody at a Fargo apartment complex. He was arrested this morning in the 3100 block of 34th Avenue. That's near Essentia Hospital after a tip. Fargo police say James Nyote was arrested without incident. Nyote is accused in the stabbing death of his 35-year-old wife last night. She was found unresponsive in the front yard of a Champlin, Minnesota home. Minnesota state government will divest its assets in Russia to show its solidarity with the people of Ukraine, a bipartisan expression of moral outrage that supporters say is worth the cost. The Senate voted 67-0 to mandate that the state sell off its investments in Russia and neighboring Belarus, which has supported Russia's month-old war in Ukraine. Those assets are mostly held by the state's public employee pension funds. A South Dakota House committee has recommended that Attorney General Jason Roundsburg not face impeachment charges. Roundsburg hit and killed a pedestrian on a highway in September 2020, telling investigators that he left the scene, believing that he'd hit a deer. Representative Mike Stevens says the evidence was not strong enough.
South Dakota Supreme Court has held that in order to make a decision, it has to be clear and convincing that the Attorney General committed one of the four criteria for impeachment. And as we reviewed all of the information and all the facts, applied it to the law, our basic conclusion is that it did not reach the level of clear and convincing.
The decision is a defeat for those who think Roundsburg should be removed from office. including Governor Nome, who was also a Republican. Individual lawmakers may still attempt to push impeachment next month. Mostly cloudy, it's 43. This is KFGO News. '43. This is KFGO News. Governor Walz has announced the activation of a USDA emergency response team to support the state's disease control and containment of H5N1 highly pathogenic avian influenza, which has been found in Minnesota and several other states.
Butch Bray is a turkey grower and vice president of Minnesota Turkey Research and Promotion Council. He's based in Brown County near Sleepy Eye, Minnesota. He wants to make sure that consumers know that poultry is safe to eat.
Prior to going to market, birds undergo testing, and it is federal law prohibits birds that test positive for high path from entering the marketplace. High path is not a food safety issue, and we're encouraging viewers and producers to keep supporting our industry by buying and eating turkey.
The USDA team will arrive on Wednesday. Minnesota is ranked number 1 in turkey production in the nation. Rusty Halverson, News Radio, KFGO.
North Dakota State Forest Service officials say there have been at least 15 wildfires in the state, and the spring wildfires just getting underway that season. Ryan Moline, fire manager with the Forest Service, says this winter was a story of really haves and have-nots in terms of precipitation. And a persistent drought is lingering in much of the state, especially in the west.
Between some sunshine that we've got and some wind, we have really dried out a lot of those fuels. So we are seeing fires across the state. At this point, we've been fairly lucky that all of our fires have remained relatively small, like less than 10 acres.
Moline says a number of counties have already put burn bans in place due to the dry conditions. He says if you're doing any work outdoors, make sure you're aware of your surroundings and be careful. He says there's a chance of something sparking and always have water or a fire extinguisher handy. Schools around Minnesota are getting another financial boost to help keep students safe. The Department of Transportation is providing more than $8 million in grants from the Safe Routes to School program, which will go to nearly 180 schools. The money will be used to reduce traffic congestion around schools. Since 2005, MnDOT has awarded more than $50 million to school districts to support safe routes to school. Fargo-Moorhead, we may see some light rain yet this afternoon. Into our west-northwest on weather radar. Maybe 46 for the high, staying mostly cloudy. Rain tonight, maybe mixed precipitation, freezing drizzle, a little light snow, and 28. Tomorrow, cloudy, windy, snow should end in the morning, maybe some drizzle or freezing drizzle, and 34. Mostly cloudy, it's 43. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
Rusty Halverson back in the KFGO
Yes,
studio.
sir. Yes, sir.
How you doing, man? Thanks
Doing
for coming
well.
back.
Doing well. Busy day.
It has been a busy. I've heard you all over KFGO News, doing your regular spots here. You've been a busy man. I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking about high path avian influenza in Minnesota. And, of course, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz activating an emergency USDA team to come into the state to try and get on top of containment. Not the first time we've seen this. 2014, 2015, growers used to it, biosecurity measures in place. We heard from Butch Bray last hour, a turkey grower and the vice president of the Minnesota Turkey Research and Promotion Council. Now, for affected producers, Bray says indemnity programs may be available for those affected producers through USDA. And again, poultry, safe to eat, Tyler. Not a problem.
Well, and that's one thing people always wonder, is it safe for me to consume as a human?
Absolutely.
That had been in a farm bill back then that was included. I imagine Colin Peterson's fingerprints are all over some of that.
Yeah.
Especially because I've heard in your KFGO news of Minnesota's rank as being the highest in this type of production.
Yeah, number one in the nation, 660 turkey farms, raising about 40 million birds each year. Yeah. A lot of turkey.
That is a lot of turkey. I appreciate the updates, man. I'm going to let you get back after it. What else you got cooking today? It feels like you're all over the place, man.
Well, good gosh. I can't even begin to tell you.
I need to know, and I'll find out tomorrow. How's that sound?
Sounds good, Tyler.
All right, Rusty Alverson, Sarah Heinrich, both multi-award winning journalists in agriculture. You can just go to kfgo.com, learn more about that. Since I had this text saying, hey, there's a pattern here of the way John Hoeven buys delegates, well, I want to visit with somebody who knows the history of that. So when we come back after CBS News, Joel Heidkamp hosts News and Views right after this. Take any cheap shots on age and the discrepancy between how many years I've been around and how many years Joel Heidkamp's been around. Let's just say we had different eras in North Dakota politics in the time we served. Hi, Joel.
No, thank you. Yeah. That's great. Here's the other part. About 4 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, when I grew my goatee, there was no gray, and there is now. But heck, then I was 55.
Yeah, and not 35?
Oh, that's right. You have gray in your beard at 35.
The stress that I have to endure when I come through these doors every day.
I know, but I like Eric.
Come on. You want to take a shot too? But you two are both redheads.
Yeah, so
Here's the thing.
we've got that camaraderie built in.
Yeah, it's
You
where,
don't mess with the brotherhood.
well, the thing is, I mean, I think it's genetics that prohibit the grayness.
I've got a few coming
Do
through,
ya?
so I can't talk too much.
You know, the redheads are literally dying off.
Yep.
There's less coming into the world than there are passing.
Well,
away.
we've got at least 3 on staff, so I don't know if you had a quota system that you had to.
Well, it's not going to be in our lifetime.
I mean, Joel kind of failed to pass along that redhead gene, didn't you?
Yes, but Brooke sticks her head in the bucket every now and then. So she's got partially red hair. So.
Okay, well, real, fake, it doesn't matter. There's something about the redheads here.
Yeah.
I got a text because I was talking about. I've received calls about. There's a convention coming up in Bismarck this week. We're going to be talking about Weldon's Tire Service is sponsoring your show, my show. I mean, I'm getting calls that John Hoeven is calling Democrats saying, I need your vote in this convention.
I heard that. I got that call. Actually, I got 2 calls.
Okay.
On it. Yep.
Well, then, so if it's from separate people, there's no way that we're all getting these calls and it's not being true.
Right. He's desperate.
Well, that's the way it certainly appears.
Yeah.
Now, I got a text from somebody that's been involved in politics the same time you were, saying, look, there's a pattern here. And Gary Nelson, well, that's before my time. So I text you to come down and explain this to me. So there's a pattern here in John Hoeven trying to buy off delegates.
Right. When he ran against Gary Nelson, all polls indicated amongst the Republican Party that Gary Nelson was the more popular, more established candidate. And, of course, John Hoeven had just switched over to be a Republican. He was a Democrat,
right,
which people held, obviously, against him on the Republican side. But the Republican rules are, as of yesterday, Monday, they had to be a member of the Republican Party by putting in, I believe it's $50. So if Tyler Axis and Joel Heitkamp want to vote at the convention, we've got to be a Republican to do that. Then, of course, we've got to be a delegate to do that. Right. Now, the Republican Party, if you fill your delegation and you have that many memberships or new memberships, if I remember right, then you qualify for half again what your delegate count is. So say it's 50. Well, then you could get 25 more just simply by filling that. So money does it there. Mm-hmm. Money brings in extra. And then if you pay those delegates to go, which in 2000, if I remember right from talking to Gary Nelson, or I don't remember exactly who I talked to, but I had 2 people tell me that John Hoeven paid each one of those delegates $300 to come in. And mostly it was college students. And so now you've got the investment of making them a Republican. You've got the investment of paying for it. But when you own a series of banks and you're a multi-millionaire, it wasn't an issue to John. It was that important. But here's what really got people mad, Tyler, which was back in 2000 when John Hoeven did this, all of those students were there. And the minute the nomination was over, They left.
I'd imagine.
They got up and left. And the Republicans, the actual Republicans, the diehard Republicans that were there, they were ticked off. I'll never forget that. And, of course, Gary, they didn't exactly do the kumbaya because Gary got, screwed, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's the grand old party. They have different rules than what our side of the aisle does.
Well,
it involves money.
Yeah, money speaks quite loudly for some of this, but I mean, they certainly moved on.
Yep.
I mean, maybe not everybody, but I mean, John's gotten the endorsement every time since then, and I'll be curious because the level of which this looks like desperation, the way it stinks, as though like I need you, I can't sleep at night because this guy, this Rick Becker's, nipping at my heels here. I mean, this business like I do. There has to be some polling on one side or the other showing that this is a tight race.
Right. See, it's an off-year election. So the Donald Trumps of the world that just make people flock to a convention aren't there. And yet in an off-year election, the report is that the Republican Party has a record number of delegates, which for an off-year election is unheard of. So we're talking about as many as 2,200
I was
delegates.
wondering, I hadn't heard what the latest figure was, but I knew they were expecting it because I think it was 1,500 or more just the last cycle.
Right. And so they're flocking too. Now you got to ask yourself, why? Is it obviously if we're getting reports, it's Hoeven, buying any ones he can. But Becker's people are motivated. And what's surprising to me, Tyler, and you know this, that when you're in politics and you're in policy, you really are quiet when you stick your neck out, because if you lose, you don't want it cut off when it comes time to do work. They're not doing that. These people are coming front and center. They're going to district conventions. They're screaming. Mikey Hoven got up on the stage to ask for an endorsement for her husband or delegates, and they booed her off the stage.
Really?
Something's up. And I thought that if Becker got 45% of the vote, that was huge for him.
Right.
I thought making the point that, hey, I kept John Hoven under 60. Well, can you imagine if he won?
No, I've said that time and time again, leading into this week, that like this is already a done deal.
Yeah.
And I mean, if what the phone calls I received, I mean, there's no reason why they're not true. I'm going to be intently watching and listening throughout this weekend.
There's a couple things we know. Becker came out and said that he will not go to the primary. Hoven didn't come out and say that. If Hoven does get beat this weekend, I would virtually guarantee you he'll go to the primary. But because of the fact that Hoven is going out and buying these votes and bringing people into it like this, if you're Rick Becker and you do lose this weekend in what could be a very close race, do you walk that back? And do you say, well, wait a second here. The circumstances are different. Nobody should be able to buy it. I'm headed to the primary. Let's see what happens.
Well, and that's the argument I made. I think that there's been another pattern, not of just John Hoven buying delegates, but of Republican convention not meeting anything that it used to. I mean, you got a governor right now that ran around the convention. You got the other senator, and Kevin Kramer did the same thing.
Yep.
That these are typically now decided at the primary.
Yep. You've got Kevin Kramer beating,
Brian Kolk.
Yep. I mean, it's just they're bypassing it and that's one of the reasons that the governor still isn't very popular. Wayne Stenhjem was popular in the Republican Party, and when the governor, when Wayne Stenhjem got the nomination and the governor went straight to the primary,
and that was a whooping.
Yep.
The results of that primary, I think.
But again, money.
Yep.
Wayne Stenhjem didn't have money. Doug Burgum did.
That's where, if Rick Becker comes out and surprises people like me and gets this endorsement this weekend out in Bismarck and then goes to the primary, I think the results probably end up about the same.
Here's
that money talks, and it gets John Hoven still to be the Republican candidate.
Brian Koch might know this better than anyone, but does the Republican National Party then support you financially? Does the state party, by its rules, put money behind your candidacy when you know that you're going to the primary against a John Hoven if he wins? And here's one more for you, Tyler. What happens? Would you concede that the better chance that the Democrats have of winning in the fall is against Rick Becker than John Hoven?
Yeah, that's the other variable here.
What happens if the Democrats, if Becker is on that ballot as the endorsed candidate, because you can vote for whoever you want in the primary as long as you stick to that party.
Yeah.
The Democrats might be only a 25% party in North Dakota, 28, something like that. But what if they crossed over and they all voted for Becker?
As well, and there is rumors of that happening in the last governor's race as well. I think there's some bitterness about that.
Well, the Democrats thought that Burgum would be the better governor in terms of putting a progressive agenda out there, and then versus Wayne, who had turned very bitter, and so did that work for them?
That's a debate that we can certainly have. Question comes in 35270, the Ag Consultants of North Dakota Text Club. Tyler, I understand Trump endorsed Hoven. Does that make a difference? You know what? Donald Trump endorsed Dan Johnston for the treasurer's race in North Dakota in the last election. It didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it carries the weight that it used to.
The other part is if you look at that base of diehard, I'll walk through fire for Donald Trump. Those are the very people that are speaking up at these district conventions, the Magrams and the Joey Millers and those folks are all in on Rick Becker. Yeah. All in on Rick Becker.
Well, all of a sudden it feels like there's a show to be watching here, and there's a story to tell. And if John Hoven's out there now, granted it had to have been done by yesterday, by the sounds of it, that we already know how much he's paid if he's had to, and if he's got enough delegates there or not. So I mean, it's all about numbers and counting. And I have no doubt that both these candidates are counting those delegates.
Well, and this is why Welton's Tire Service out of Lisbon told both of us cover these conventions. They didn't do it in a partisan way.
No.
They said if you're going to do it, you got to do both. If you do it, you got to be fair to both. And I thank them for sponsoring, but this is why you and I will be talking about the GOP on Friday.
No doubt. Joel, appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, we'll chat again tomorrow. I'll get you this weather update from Too Tall Tom Schmansky. Your thoughts, you can send those in to 35270. You can also call the Laney studio line at 237-5948. I'm Tyler Axis. You got it locked into KFGO Fargo. I forget in the first 2 hours of this show that we got a meat raffle going on. I know earlier today it takes two drew out the latest 3 qualifiers. And you know what? If you haven't qualified yet, or if you haven't texted the word MEAT, MEAT, to 35270, what are you waiting for? Every Tuesday on It Takes Two, every Thursday on Afternoons Live, we're drawing 3 names, and you're going to win meat from Barnesville Grocery. And you know what? Then those names, we're going back into the bucket. Then on April 21st over at Bar 9, we're throwing you a party because we're getting you gearing up for grilling. Another Traeger giveaway is what we're doing. But you can't win if you don't play, and you can't play if you don't text the word MEAT to 35270. Or if you're at your computer, you're at your desk, don't worry, the boss ain't looking. You can go to kfgo.com. You just scroll down the page a little bit until you find Gear Up for Grilling. Click there. Fill out the registration form and be listening Tuesdays on It Takes Two, Thursdays right here on Afternoons Live. Get you caught up with the latest CBS National headlines when we come back. The senior political correspondent and reporter for the Argus Leader was in the room at the South Dakota legislature in which they chose to not move forward on the impeachment of the Attorney General, Jason Roundsburg. I want to know from Joe what the feeling was in that room when you've got Mr. Bover's family right there getting heartbroken again because nobody seems to be willing to provide some justice for this family. We'll have that conversation right after CBS News. This is KFGO Fargo. Stick around. Get you caught up on the latest KFGO news. Thanks for all the new registrants that text MEAT to 35270. Be listening on Thursday after our conversation with the Meat Dude to hear if your name is drawn for the Meat from Barnesville Grocery. Again, party over at Bar 9. April 21st. Actually, on this Thursday, you're going to want to be listening all day as well because it's the Twins takeover here on all of KFGO programs. We're going to get people qualified so you get to potentially go down to opening day, which is going to be taking place next week. I believe next Thursday already is going to be the opening of Major League Baseball. Next week, we got a couple of things coming up. I'm getting you ready for the Masters and the opening day of baseball over at Twin Peaks. Continue this conversation because I'm clearly frustrated and bothered by the lack of justice for the Bover family. I want to visit with the senior political reporter from the Argus Leader who was in the room when the legislature said, nope, we don't think he should be impeached.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead, 43 and mostly cloudy. I'm Paul Jerkins. Fargo police have arrested a suspect in the deadly stabbing of his wife in the Minneapolis suburb of Champlin. Police on the Red River Valley SWAT team responded to the Dakota Park apartment complex south of 32nd Avenue South after receiving a tip this morning. Police arrested the 45-year-old man. Champlin police found the body of 35-year-old Pichu Yates in the front yard of a home. Officers earlier found the suspect's car in Brooklyn Park. He was taken to the Cass County Jail, pending his return to the Twin Cities on a murder charge. A South Dakota House committee is recommending that the Attorney General face no impeachment charges for his actions surrounding a 2020 fatal car crash. Governor Noem had pushed for Attorney General Jason Roundsburg, a fellow Republican, to be removed from office, but a Republican-controlled House committee found his actions did not merit impeachment. Individual House lawmakers may still bring impeachment charges against Roundsburg, but the committee's decision was a major setback for those trying to remove him from office. Roundsburg struck and killed a man walking near a highway. Bismarck area Republicans, or Democrats that is, have appointed a North Dakota Senate candidate to the seat for which he is campaigning. Tracy Potter says the District 35 Democratic Committee has appointed him to fill the remainder of Senator Aaron Olban's term, which expires in November. Olban recently resigned after President Biden appointed her to become state director for the Department of Agriculture Rural Development Agency. Potter announced a campaign last month for that seat that he held from 2006 to 2010. KFGO News reporter J.W. Cox says Minnesota is looking for a dog to raise awareness for a safe digging awareness media campaign.
Minnesota Energy Resources may want your dog to help remind people about safe digging. In honor of National Safe Digging Month in April, they'll be collecting photos of dogs digging in their favorite spots around the yard. Submissions will be narrowed to an elite group of finalists from which one winner will be chosen as the year-long Ambassador Dog, helping to remind people to call 811 to have buried utility lines marked before you begin a digging project. Submissions collected between now and April 10th.
KFGO Weather Center forecast. We have some rain to the north-northwest of Fargo-Moorhead on the radar, and the meteorologist Tom Shemansky has some rain in his forecast for tonight, late afternoon perhaps. Becoming breezy once again tonight, east wind 5 to 20, and then out of the north it'll pick up later on. 28 for the overnight low with some rain, maybe some light snow. Tomorrow then cloudy, windy, snow should end in the morning with a chance of freezing drizzle or just drizzle on 34. Still looking for anywhere from just a trace of snow to as much as 3 inches Fargo-Moorhead tonight through tomorrow morning. Partly sunny Thursday and 36. 43, mostly cloudy. Paul Jergens, News Radio, KFGO.
Throughout the afternoon here, we've been sharing our thoughts on the situation in South Dakota. It's this tragedy that we've been talking about since the beginning, and I've told you my thoughts on the justice system, and now, quite frankly, we've got the political side of it. And last night, you had the committee, a House Select Committee, announced that they're not going to recommend impeaching the state's Attorney General, Jason Roundsburg. And I wanted to know some more details about what happened, what didn't happen, what was said from somebody that was in the room. To do that is Joe Sneevy, and he is with the Argus Leader. In fact, he's a senior political reporter with the Argus Leader, joining us here on KFGO. Joe, I appreciate your time. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate the fact that you were in the room. I'm curious, that's this decision has been a long time coming. I guess I should have braced myself for this being the outcome. I should have probably known better. I was hoping otherwise. You were just the reporter, or one of the reporters in the room. I'm curious, what was said in there?
Well, very little was said in public. It was about a 4.5-hour closed-door meeting. Much of this entire process has been behind closed doors. Last night wasn't any different. When they came out of that closed-door session, they made some very formal motions, one of them being, the motion not to recommend impeachment. The report, they did brief reporters afterwards, very vaguely. Most of our questions were answered by saying, we'd refer you to the report. It's 22 pages. In a nutshell, these guys just didn't see, they didn't see a path to impeachment by following the rules that they're bound to within the Constitution that map out impeachment. They were holding a very narrow standard, a narrow view of what would constitute impeachment, and they said it just wasn't there. The Democrats, whether it's a politically expedient motivation or not, they had a different take on it. So,
Joe, what was the reaction in the room? From those that came, to witness this, to hear from the decision. I know this isn't exactly the same as waiting for a verdict from a jury or a judge, but there was people that had expectations there. I'm just curious, what was the reaction?
Well, I don't think it was unexpected for the folks in the press corps who've been following it and sort of reading the room, so to speak. And even the family who was in the room, the widow and the mother and a cousin, they chatting with them in the hallway while we were waiting for executive session to end. They didn't have much confidence that the committee would recommend impeachment. But when the decision was made, you could tell the family was not pleased, frustrated, sort of disheartened. The widow, shed tears, and it was tough to watch that part of it.
And now I don't know if it was in the committee or if it was an offhand somewhere else, but and I've seen it in multiple places that members on this committee or somewhere along the way had referenced, well, he was probably a Democrat anyway. Did you hear anything that was anything remotely close to that?
Well, it's been a very complicated web between the legislative branch, the attorney general, and the governor. And I don't know how much your listeners are aware of the governor's involvement, but a couple weeks ago, before the second to last meeting of the committee, the Department of Public Safety issued a release kind of trickling out more information that was found by investigators following that crash. And one of the pieces of information was about a text message that Roundsburg had received from somebody unidentified, only as a political consultant, who made a comment that, at least Joe Beaver was a Democrat. In fairness, they didn't provide Roundsburg's response to that or any context around that, so we don't know how he, if what he said or if he was dismissive of that in any way. So, but yeah, that's the Department of Public Safety released that information. We still don't know if that's true or not, I guess, because we haven't seen any of the investigation materials that, the bulk of the materials that the committee was working with, and that the Department of Public Safety was citing there. So,
well, if there's any hint of truthfulness, it's absolutely disgusting for somebody to send that type of response to somebody's untimely, tragic death. And I'm not going to pull you into that. I'll share my thoughts after I let you go, because I just wanted to have you on for just the factual side of this. So this
yeah, well, it's certainly not a good look.
Yeah, there's no question there. I mean, just god-awful to have that mentality. But Joe Sneevy is my guest. He is with the Argus Leader, the senior political reporter for this publication down in South Dakota. This committee has now made their decision that they did not find, any merit to move forward on impeachment, not to their narrow view, as you said, of, what they thought justified this. Is this the end of it? I mean, is there still a chance that other members from the legislature take this up and then force the whole body to vote on this?
Oh, absolutely. I would be surprised if when the legislature reconvenes for this special session, because this session's been going on technically since November, and they'll convene April 12th at the Capitol, and I would be very surprised if there weren't motions or articles of impeachment drafted and then voted upon by the entire House. I don't have a good bet one way or the other if they'll advance impeachment to a Senate trial. I think it's in the realm of possibilities, but it's also the politically expedient thing to do. But I think that report will carry a lot of weight with a lot of these members.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would suspect that it'll provide enough cover for those that were kind of just wanting this to go away to do just that. I'm curious, you're a political reporter. I mean, watching as forceful as Governor Noem's come out on this very topic, does she carry any weight among the lawmakers themselves? Because it doesn't appear to be the case in this instance. I know that they didn't override a couple of vetoes earlier this week, but what's the reception that Governor Noem has and the relationship with the Republican lawmakers in control?
Well, on this issue, I know it's been counterproductive for some lawmakers that we're sort of on the fence, one way or the other. But as she sort of dug in, they've sort of started to side with the folks that are more apprehensive to advance with impeachment because they feel like it's become ultra political. It's not about the issue at hand. It's not about Joe Beaver. It's not about the crash anymore. It's about a political battle between leaders in the House and the governor's office. And they just sort of want to wash their hands of it all.
Well, I've got some thoughts on that I'm going to share as well about perhaps being a little short-sighted on the political side for those lawmakers to come to that realization, or that in their mind anyway. What did I miss on this, Joe? This has been such a tough topic because every time we get into this, you think about the Beaver family, and I know they were in attendance and obviously not thrilled with the outcome. But what did I miss that the South Dakota listeners of KFGO should hear before I let you go?
Well, I think they all realize that the political expedient thing to do would be to advance impeachment. The average voter isn't going to dig it into the nuances of the report. They just know that Jason Roundsburg still has a job. But they also see it as he's likely not to get the nomination at convention in June for re-election if he even officially runs. And they see him as sort of a lame duck who's harmless anyway. And that's sort of driving a lot of the conversation around this. It's been a fascinating thing to watch. There's been a lot of wrinkles along the way from start to finish. And we've still got at least one or two more chapters left before it's over.
Well, Joe, now that we got your number, you just be sure to answer next time we call, all right? I appreciated your reporting, and I appreciate you joining us here on KFGO.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Yeah, you take care. Joe Sneevy, he is the senior political reporter with the Argus Leader. A couple of things that, again, I need to... A text sent to Jason Roundsburg from a political consultant saying, well, at least the victim was a Democrat, as though that makes this okay that he struck and killed this individual with his car. How disgusting. And then to have the short-sightedness of these lawmakers saying, well, now that the governor's weighed in, we feel like this is more of a back and forth between the legislature and the governor, and not at all about the attorney general himself that struck and killed somebody. Good grief. We'll get more of your thoughts on that right after this message. I'm Tyler Axis. You're listening to KFGO Fargo. All right, I'm going to clean up a couple of messages at 35270. Consultants of North Dakota Text Club here. We'll switch gears. Final half hour. We'll try to lighten up. Clearly, this situation has me beyond frustrated. I mean, I'm cleaning it up because this is it's a FCC regulated show. But to hear that there was a text. Now, it's one thing that, the rumors are, but to have the receipt, that somebody said, well, at least the victim was a Democrat. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Now, the other thing on the political side of this, not the partisan side, just the sheer political of being a lawmaker in South Dakota, and then just, this attorney general is harmless. He's a lame duck. Well, he's not harmless behind the wheel and distracted driving. Well, know the outcome there. So don't give me this, he's harmless. He's just going to sit in his office and, he's probably not going to get the endorsement. That's even if he runs. You have a job to do. And they're just going to, I just won't make eye contact with him if he's coming down the hallway. Courageous. Very courageous for those lawmakers that just want to, just let it go away. Tyler, it's time for South Dakota voters to clean house and vote their state legislator out of office. I know where I'd be voting if it was my lawmaker that was too cowardly to do the job. And looking at, this more of us against the governor and not thinking about that family. Thinking about the actions that he did that's been documented. Tyler, I think it's very important. I think important every time you mention the South Dakota case that you say you hit somebody, kill them, and covered it up. If I ever kill somebody by a car accident, I pray that there is some forgiveness for an accident. There is no forgiveness or excuse for the cover-up. I cannot believe they did not vote to impeach. Disgusting. The state I grew up in for 18 years. Well, and that's a mouthful there. You're right. That's what some people keep coming back to, the fact that if anyone else listening to me right now had done this by the sheer accident of it, the regret, the remorse that a normal person would feel, knowing what they accidentally did and what they were responsible for, you do not get, or at least I don't, I can't speak for you, I don't get the sense that Jason Roundsburg has any remorse or any sorrow for what he did. And he's getting away with it by just getting a slap on the wrist. And then to have this last whim of to where, you don't represent the state of South Dakota as the way you should, as being the leader of the law enforcement by being the attorney general. Well, apparently to the legislature, he does. I mean, I would be questioning how they're looking themselves in the mirror as well for not doing their duty and what responsibility they have, because they just they're shrinking from it right now. That's clear to me. Tyler, is there a civil lawsuit yet? I would guess that is the next step. If I were an attorney, I'd be reaching out to the family as well. Tyler, the thing that bothers me the most is it stinks like skunk from the beginning. It just stinks. It does. I mean, the whole process. As I said, I've been in vehicles that have hit deer. Not once was there a flashlight in the ditch. Not once were there a pair of glasses inside the vehicle either. That is exactly what happened. And then he drove off, went to a sheriff's house. They came back later on after the victim was in the ditch overnight and discovered what he did. It's just absolutely stinks. You're right. And the fact that nothing besides a slap on the wrist has come up to this point, that stinks even more. And to know that there was a text messages sent from some political consultant to the driver of Jason Roundsburg saying, well, at least he was a Democrat, that is absolutely trash and disgusting beyond anything of this entire situation. Well, okay, we'll get you caught up. KFGO News, when we come back, we'll switch gears here. We'll try to lighten up the final half hour. We'll talk about the change in the NFL rules when we come back. I'm Tyler Axis. You are listening to Afternoons Live on KFGO.
News and weather this hour brought to you by Otter Tail Power Company, positively impacting communities they serve for more than a century.
Cloudy, Fargo-Moorhead, 43 degrees. I'm Paul Jurgens. Minnesota state government will divest its assets in Russia to show its solidarity with the people of Ukraine, a bipartisan expression of moral outrage its supporters say is worth the cost. The Senate voted 67-0 this afternoon to mandate that the state sell off its investments in Russia and neighboring Belarus, which has supported Russia's month-old war in Ukraine. Those assets are mostly held by the state's public employee pension funds. The vote followed unanimous approval in the House last Thursday. It now sends the bill to Governor Tim Walz for his signature. Attempts are underway to boost rural North Dakota populations. A group called Catch wants to recruit refugees to those rural areas that need workers. Spokesman Bill Patry of Bismarck says the group is organizing a formal organization. He says there's growing awareness of the plight of refugees, especially because of Ukraine, at the same time as a labor shortage.
When rural communities step up and organize and say, we need workers, we can teach English as a second language, we can teach you how to drive in winter conditions, we'll help you find housing. I think it's kind of a new era.
The Catch Group is meeting Saturday in Carrington. 43, this is KFGO News. This is KFGO News. A 45-year-old man wanted in a suburban Minneapolis homicide has been taken into custody at a Fargo apartment complex. He was arrested this morning in the 3100 block of 34th Avenue South near Essentia Health after a tip. Police say James Nyote was arrested without incident. Nyote is accused in the stabbing death of his 35-year-old wife last night in Champlin. She was found unresponsive in the front yard of a home. A Grand Forks police officer suffered a broken arm during a struggle with a man who resisted arrest. It started early this morning when officers tried to pull over a 19-year-old Grand Forks man for running a stop sign. After a short pursuit, the man left the vehicle and ran. He was eventually found hiding in a dumpster. The man was handcuffed and placed in the squad car, where he became agitated and attempted to remove the cuffs. Officer Luke Wentz's arm was broken while trying to get the man under control. A South Dakota House committee is recommending that the Attorney General not face impeachment charges surrounding the death of a man who was struck and killed by Jason Roundsburg as he was driving home from a political fundraiser. The committee vice chair, Representative Mike Stevens of Yankton, says the facts don't meet the requirements for impeachment.
The process became one where we had to establish what the facts were. In any type of a situation like this, you're going to have situations where, not everybody agrees as to what the facts are. Then we had to apply the law. Well, we really don't have that much law in South Dakota. We only have 4 criteria in which to use as it relates to impeachment.
Governor Kristi Noem had pushed for Roundsburg, also a Republican, to be removed from office. Individual House lawmakers may still bring impeachment charges against Roundsburg, but the committee's decision was a major setback for those trying to remove him from office. The full House will meet next month to further consider the case for impeachment. A 10-year-old South Dakota boy who died while saving his younger sister in the Big Sioux River will receive the Carnegie Medal, North America's highest honor for civilian heroism. Ricky Sneevy was on a fishing trip with his stepfather and siblings on the Big Sioux last June. His 5-year-old sister fell into the water, and he dove in after her and was able to push her to the riverbank. He was caught in an undertow in deeper water. Fargo-Moorhead, areas of rain tonight, maybe some mixed precipitation, a little light rain mixed with snow at some point perhaps, and we'll still see a strong wind, eventually north at 12 to 27, 28 for the overnight low. Cloudy, windy tomorrow, snow should end in the morning, maybe some freezing drizzle or drizzle, and 34. Thursday, 36, partly sunny. Fargo-Moorhead, mostly cloudy, 43. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
25 minutes until that 5 o'clock punch out, and we're going to get you there together here on Afternoons Live. Drive time news is going to be following. Minnesota Wild versus the Flyers tonight. 6:45 is when the puck drops here. You meet this microphone yourself on whatever you want to get off your chest. I'm here for you. 237-5948 Delaney studio line. You can text in as well to the Ad Consultants of North Dakota Text Club. That's 35270. CBS National News on the way. More right here on KFGO to follow. I hinted slightly at this earlier today, but I want to give you more details. This Thursday, Twins are taking over every single KFGO lineup. You got the morning crew, you got news and views, it takes two. And Afternoons Live, we're going to be qualifying one person to win 4 tickets to the opening day at Target Field. And that's going to be a week from Thursday. I do believe it's going to be April 7th. I think that's next Thursday, right? If my calendar and my mind adds up, okay. But you want to be listening this Thursday to potentially be going to Minneapolis next Thursday. That's going to be drawn during the Drive Time News at 5:05 on the dot. Derek Hansen, well, he's away. That means my producer, Eric Johnson, is going to be pulling your name likely on Thursday, I would imagine. So if you butter him up real nice here.
I don't know how much control I have over the actual name that's drawn, or if I'm just in charge for the announcement, which means I get to do the whole, hopefully it's an ezy name to pronounce dance.
That's the chore. Now, here's one thing that I learned on It Takes Two today. Compared to what happened on Afternoons Live last Thursday when we were drawing names for the meat raffle, I included first, last, town. They cheaped out. They did first name and town. So they found a clever way to avoid any very difficult last names. So maybe listen and learn from them.
Maybe first name, last. Now I just got to hope I don't get a weird first name.
There are a few of those out there. And if you don't get a chance, if you don't win tickets to Target Field, Buffalo Wild Wings has your ticket to the game. You can go over there, and we'll have some more of that going on as well. So next Thursday's opening day, that means I'm not going to be joining you because we're taking the Twins home opener right here. So no Afternoons Live next Thursday. But next Wednesday, I'm going to be at Twin Peaks. Because if you think about next Thursday, you've got MLB opening, you've got the Masters starting as well. So we're going to be telling you all about why you're going to want to consider going over to Twin Peaks on Thursday to watch the Masters and baseball, if you're not going to Wild Wings. But here's a little thing that might catch your attention. If you are at all interested in the Masters, read into this or not, Tiger Woods is practicing today at Augusta National. Does he play? I mean, he hasn't played since his accident, has he?
I don't think so. And maybe he's thinking of the par 3 competition. I know a lot of pros have fun with that one.
See, and maybe that's why we're all getting teased here, and it's going to be, which would still be cool because I think there was the kind of the fear that he might not have been able to walk again following that horrific accident. I mean, remember seeing that mangled up vehicle after that? But that's what's going on right now. I mean, literally just within the last hour and a half, Tiger Woods practicing at Augusta. So read into it if you want or not. It does not matter to me, but another reason you might want to be watching both the Masters and the Twins at wherever you could possibly do that. One more sports-related thing that came out earlier today. This is something I think a lot of people have been waiting for, and we're baby stepping into it. The NFL overtime rules. I know you and I have had conversations as to, do we have to change it up? Should both teams get one possession? Do they go to what college football does? Do they let it be? Well, earlier today, the NFL announces that they're going to change overtime rules, giving both teams possession in the playoffs. So they're the regular season, nothing changes. But I mean, here's what's going to happen. They're going to realize during the playoffs, which is win or go home. So that it's the most riveting of football around, that they're going to realize, hey, this is easily done. People enjoy that. They're going to expand this over to the regular season at some point, right?
Yeah,
I would imagine
you'd think so. I don't understand the two sets of rules playoff.
Nor do I. I really don't. I mean, you're either change the overtime rules or leave them. Don't change it just for playoffs. Now, if I'm Josh Allen and the Bills, like, well, that's cute. Thanks. Because them not getting the possession. So going forward, that'll prevent any of that thing. But just have that for both then. Have that for the regular season. Have that for the postseason. Why change it up just because you're in the playoffs now?
We saw something similar happen not that long ago when they introduced a field goal doesn't win it. And I want to say that this was a playoff game also that was decided by a coin flip, a short drive, and a field goal ending in a playoff game.
I can recall at least one Super Bowl that's exactly what happened.
And I believe when they introduced that, changed the rule, it started in the playoffs and eventually got through. So I don't know why we need this staggered approach.
That's the thing. Like, what needs to be proven during the playoffs that this is the change that should be happening? Because if you do this for the play, I bet you there is next to zero chance that if they're going to do this playoffs, if they need this, that they're going to say, well, okay, that didn't quite work out like we planned. Just do it. Yeah. Just do it. Why stagger into this? It doesn't make any sense to me.
And if you're really concerned about game time in the regular season, just end games in a tie in regulation. It doesn't happen often.
Oh,
just
God. Now those are fighting words.
Well,
man.
I don't want that either. But if your only concern is the length of game, then
yeah, the only time that you'd be concerned about that is if you are watching Sunday night football or Monday night football,
right?
Or the other caveat, because I saw some Packer fans complaining about this because they're always America's game of the week, which means they get the afternoon slot. So if you have a local, say, Vikings game at the noon game, they go into overtime. Now you're missing part of your game.
Yeah, but with the advent of streaming, you can work around that. I mean, we see that happen in other sports. March Madness is a great example. If a game's going long, they just put the other game on a different channel temporarily. Like, I don't know why you don't do
that for the NFL though.
No, they should though.
Yeah,
they absolutely.
It's all about
should.
The dollars, man.
Yeah, well, you still got eyes on the
bill, y'all. I'm just saying, either go in or don't change it.
Yeah, don't do
flirt
this
with
halfway.
us. Yeah, don't wink at us from across the bar. Right. You know, buy the tab. We're just look. Go ahead. Let's go forward here. It's just, I mean, I should be thankful. We're finally getting it. It's just we could have gone.
Yeah, why? Just do it all.
Yeah, exactly. 237-5948. More messages coming in about my comments on the Jason Roundsburg situation. And quite frankly, your thoughts as well. And I think there's been nobody that's defended him. And I don't know how you could, except for lawmakers that are too cowardly to remove him from office because it's pure politics. But this message, and I don't know how one could answer. Tyler, I wonder what Jason Roundsburg sees when he looks in the mirror. It's pretty sad. That's why in his demeanor, following all this, I don't get the sense that there's been any remorse. I don't. It's as though he doesn't feel that he did anything wrong from my perspective here. And that's so troubling to me that it is very sad. One more I'll get out before I get you caught up with KFGO news or KFGO weather. Too Tall Tom. Tyler Roundsburg is at fault for leaving the scene, which means he probably had been drinking. He deserves 5 years at least. Yeah, I'm not sure about probably had been drinking. All I know is he was distracted driving because he had his phone and he veered off the lane and he struck and killed somebody. And that to me is enough to have more than just a slap on the wrist, which is currently what he has had. It's not acceptable. I mean, it's appalling. It is one of the many, many descriptors I could use, but I'm limited because of what I can and cannot say on the signal that is 790 AM, 94.1 and 104.7 FM KFGO. Let's get you that weather update from Too Tall Tom Schmansky. We'll see what's coming up on the Drive Time News. We'll give you a preview of what's coming up a little bit later on as well. I'm Tyler Axis. Don't go anywhere.